Let's give it a second to see if we're live. Make sure it works out okay. Mm, yes. Let's wait a sec for that. Okay. All right. Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. So here we are. So, these are coming back for part two. So I will finish what I was going to say about the Tyson food um, factory plant closing. Right. So I try to read when a company um, does their annual reports. Usually they'll tell you ahead of time what they're going to do, unless something's like crazy drastic change. Right. So I went to their report and I didn't really see anything. I got halfway through all their document files. They're a little messy. They don't get them all out. Like usually there's like a PowerPoint slide deck, and instead there was just like a PDF and it was just a lot of reading through words and not like a graphs or anything to show some quick learnings I could share. Um, but basically, yeah, it's just there's just people. They're displacing American workers in one place and then hiring immigrants in another place. And the I guess really what I was trying to find is like what are the driving factors for it? Like is there any way to explain it away, besides something to be like, oh, they asylum seekers need jobs, just like Americans, legal Americans do, etc. Because there's that bleeding heart thing, right? Where you're like, well, they really need jobs. It's like, yeah, but they broke the law to get here. I mean, so I'm a man of justice. I think justice is important in the world, and I think that a family that's been here, because that's the difference. It happens in companies too, in that micro level, is that if a guy is there, so you're here in America, you're born here, you've got a job since you can start working at like 13 in some states, right? 12 or 13. And so you've been working and uh, you've built a life here. But more importantly, like a business aspect wise, you've paid into taxes the whole time you're here. The things you've done have benefited other Americans while you were here. You bought food from this local restaurant here, and that went to that local restaurant, that people, America, blah, just stayed where you were at. And then that's where the difference lies is if you take a job away from that guy or gal who's been here the whole time, always contributing, always dealing with the BS, always, they're a part of the system, and then you take them out of the system, you take their job away, their livelihood, and then you replace it with somebody who broke into the country. They say they're seeking asylum. We could argue whether that's true or not, because for most people it doesn't seem to be true that they're seeking asylum. But it's anyway. I don't want to get too deep into that, but I can defend that pretty well, I think. But because there's good stories of illegal immigrants. Of course, there's tons of good stories where people are like, hey, they were illegal, they came in, they had their own business, and they do. I see a lot. There's a lot of uh, I don't even know if I call them asylum seekers, just call them migrants or immigrants, whatever. Right? They came to this country and they even if they snuck in, right? They went and got jobs, family people. Usually they sneak in with their family or they sneak in because they need to provide for their family. Right now, a lot of people they see coming across, I don't see any women and children. It's just all like what they call military aged men. That falls into some other conspiracies. I'm not really that worried about at the moment. But yeah, there's kind of it's just that displacement of people that have been here the whole time. That's the problem, right? It's like we send money to Ukraine to help them with their fight, and it's like, well, we've got veterans here that are homeless. Okay, but equally fair. I mean, if we were just printing money to just give it to someone else, give it to the people here, like, and that's where the whole thing falls apart. The whole money, the capitalism of it, of everything, it all falls apart when you start thinking about how we can just print money for some other people in some other place, because some person in the government deems that those people deserve it more, right? Something like that. Um, anyway, so Tyson Foods doing that. I couldn't really find um, that it was like 100% true. I didn't see a smoking gun besides this report. I believe it's going to happen. I mean, I'm sure. You know, um, it'll at least be like partially true, right? Something like that. So anyway, just stay tuned for the truth of that. But here, this video, I just went to the place that I initially saw it at, but it's old. It's from like 1995 or six, but it talks about the how the media lies and manipulates people. And it was done by a guy named Brian Springer. It's pretty famous, but it's old. And what I've noticed about the newer generation is that the conspiracies keep coming up over and over again. So, being as old as I am, I see things on Twitter, on Facebook, on all kinds of social media platforms where it's like an old conspiracy, and then or even on TikTok, I've seen them right, but they'll come back. And everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, did you know this?" And I'm like, you know what? I forget that we have new generations of humans, and they don't understand that these things have been around and known for a while. And then the fact that media will call them conspiracy theories and block them out, it just holds people back from learning about them. And then so later we learn more. And anyway, the problem though, really, is that like when there's allegations from like Nickelodeon just happened, right? The thing that came out said they were um, SAing people um, and abusing their workers and their actors and stuff like that. We've always known that. There's the backstage casting couch, right? Thing. There's the do this for me to get this movie role, and it's always perverted, right? Always nasty. And so that's where we're at. These things are coming to light, and for people like me, it's like, yeah, duh. Like I don't look at, and again, don't make false idols of people, okay? Every single person that I know that loves somebody famous, they later, like say he grew up loving Bruce Lee, right? I Great martial artist, no doubt. Never take it away from him. Sure, he's fantastic. Drug addict. Okay. I remember seeing his muscles and being like, man, that guy's super toned. I wonder how he gets that toned, like that crazy tone. They're like, oh, here's what he did. And he's got like the medical things that constantly shock your muscles and stuff. So even when he's sleeping, he's like working his muscles. I'm like, that's dedication. And then when you look at how physical he was and like how he got to that place, and then you see that he was like a crack or cocaine, I don't know, it's crack, it's cocaine. I'm sure it's pure for him, right? But he was an addict to a drug that keeps you energized and keeps you awake, right? So I mean, you can't get to that physical peak then unless you do that cheating that he did, right? Just like that, the guy that eats raw meat and he'll grab like uh, you know, some animal's testicle and just eat it, like in his commercial, he's like, "Get big and buff like me." It looks like he's gonna have a heart attack any moment, like mid sentence. Um, sorry, but he does look impressive, like a big, strong man, like you'd think back in the day. But even they, debunked him, and I knew that immediately. You see a guy like that, and you're like, "Yeah, dude, you're juiced." But his story was he wasn't juiced, right? And he still swears to this day, "I'm not," he's not juiced. It's all natural, blah blah. He might take a creatine powder or whatever, pre-workout, and you're like, "Yeah, right." So anyway, it's things like that. Don't make false idols of people. They're always lying to you. Um, None of them get to where they're at naturally. I got a ton of examples where I can keep going on about this, but I don't want to keep going too long. It's getting really late. I just want to do this last part of this video because this is important. So, um, yeah, and I guess I don't want to take the long way. I just can't remember how it starts. So I wanted to play a little bit how it started. It has to do
Hello?
with the presidential
That was Larry
race.
King, who was anointed as the father of talk show democracy because TV viewers could phone his program and ask the candidates questions on the air. The viewer calls to King's show was seen as a seed of a future TV democracy in which citizens could vote for a candidate or pending legislation by picking up a special remote control and voting yes or no. Taking viewer calls on Larry King's show is TV evangelist Pat Robertson, whose organization, the Christian Coalition, seeks working control of the Republican Party by 1996.
I'd like to ask Mr. Robertson.
So I just want to point out before you even get started, if you're in the conspiratorial mindset, right away, the media brainwashing, the backstage things that happen. So they have it all. I mean, imagine this, please. Just this one thing I think people don't realize is that things take time. So I'll give a little spiel here. if you see a clip on YouTube or whatever, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you see it on, where it shows some guy fighting some other guy, and it's made to look one angle, right? You have to ask yourself, the first question is, where's the rest of the video? Right? So if it just starts and stops, and there's no somebody put their phone down, turned it off, you didn't see them start the phone up at the start of the fight, obviously there's more story there, right? There's context you can get. And you can actually find out who's the attacker and who's the defender, right? Who's the aggressor, the defender. Um, big story came out anyway. I get too many tangents going. There's a lot of evidence here, but I won't go there. The two girls that were fighting, there's a young black girl and a young white girl. Well, young, they look young. Big fight. But it's where the black girl slammed the white girl's head on the ground like 3 times after she had her on the ground, right? Like really hard slams. And then that girl's in like a coma, brain damage, obviously, things like that. But I saw like a longer version of the video, and at the start of the video, it looks like, and I kept trying to look at it and go, I don't know, but it looks like the white girl swung first. Now, there's a lot of videos I see where I don't agree with the head slamming on the ground thing, but I really, really believe in the aggressor defender like fact, right, of the justice system. So like the first person who first swings, I know they were in like an altercation already, like circling each other. There might have been like a push, and they waited a little bit. But then like the first major like attack, if you're gonna attack somebody and you're gonna act like you're tough, and you get into that fight and you're come on, like you're not the one that's walking away. Given that you have the opportunity, there's a lot of ifs here. There's a lot of scenario building, but seeing the longer video, it just looks like the white girl decided, hey, I'm gonna engage and I'm gonna be the first one to swing. And that's unfortunate for her because it didn't work out her way. Now, it is savage to bang somebody's head on the ground 3 times as hard as you can, but uh, that's what makes it tough for the justice system. It's like, yeah, she shouldn't have been that savage. And then I'm like, but at the same time, like, what are you doing fighting with this person? And you really have to figure these things out. And the reason why this gets touchy is because there's a lot of situations I've seen, and I'm just trying to be, I'm trying to stand on the moral ground, a firm line, because there's other things I've seen where people would argue very strongly for the defendant, and I'll say no, 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 and I'll watch the video and I'll go back and I'll argue no, that person's one first, they're the aggressor. Just because they suck at fighting doesn't mean that um, that's okay, right? Because sometimes the aggressor wins, and it's a crazy world out there. But anyway, stuff like that. Seeing a longer version of the clip, it really changes your perspective, right? There's one where there's like two girls that they're in like tight dresses, and they're attacking these black guys, and you see the girl kick at the black guy, like that's where the film starts, where the guy hits her from behind, and the two black guys are beating up these girls. 'Cause obviously, two guys against two little skinny girls with dresses on, they dominated whatever, and you're like, oh, this is horrible. Like it makes you feel like mad, You're like, God, get these animals off of her. And then they show a longer version of the clip where the guys are just walking, the girls are mad at them, and then the girl starts fighting like a man, like she starts fighting him. And if I'm gonna be consistent on it, I gotta say, what are you doing, fighting a man with fists? What are you doing? Like, were you gonna just push him and you think it's okay? I think she hits him like 4 times. I'll say 3 just to be conservative about it. And then he finally goes off on her. He goes crazy and he does go feral. And again, that's the problem. Is like, he didn't have to take it as far as he did. And his buddy definitely, one of the guys, self-defense. The other guy, piece of shit. Yeah, he's bad. But that's the problem, is that there's that nuance there, and it's really hard to see that in the shorter clip. But the longer version of the clip, clearly the guy was on the defensive first. Okay, but they share that clip that's shorter to get a rise out of people, get that racism bubbling up, right? Like, black feral monsters, right? Um, so either way, it's a lot like that. But anyway, when I see this clip, let me go all the way back. When I see this about media control is what I was trying to say. So here you can call into Larry King Live. You can ask a question, right? Okay, my questions about that process are the questions pre-screened, because in my world, um, there would be times when the manager of a company or like CEO would come into town, and they'd have a town hall and people would be allowed to ask questions. Kind of. The questions were pre-written, pre-submitted, pre-screened. rewritten, and then if you were chosen to say the sentence, you were chosen at the exact time to say your sentence. A lot of setup. Here, national TV, talking about a presidential candidate. Hey, what question do you want to ask the president? The guy on the phone, he could say, yeah, ask him why he's a piece of crap. And Larry King could just go, yeah, he wants to know why the economic downturn of last month would be any different than and say some crazy little professional thing that he wants to say to help that candidate or hurt that candidate the most, right? So you can't even hear the question, so you don't get to know, but it's there. Sometimes you do get to hear him. I think later you were, but for things like this that are really important, they didn't really specify. Also, the audience gets to vote on a device. Oh man, let's get into voting, right? Electronically. Whoa, yeah, that's a doozy. They could just change the vote. They could just be like, yeah, go ahead and vote. We'll have it telling on the screen here, and then they just load up their PowerPoint slide they've had 5 days ago. It just shows the vote, whatever of the audience vote. Um, and so, if you're not skeptical about those things, you should be, because this is what I think of, right? Like, I used to read comic books a lot, and Batman had a few like key phrases that were about criminal. And this is back when Batman wasn't a cliche. He wasn't pulling out. It was like this mid time where he's just really hardcore, and all his storylines were just detective work, right? And he was just basically just literally being a detective. He didn't hardly fight anybody. A lot of people thought they were pretty boring. Um, they were. I'm trying to remember the number runs, but I remember like 600, about 600 something, I think. Anyway, it had some gritty covers. It was drawn kind of hardcore noir. Um, anyway, in those Batman comics, he would say things like that, like who has the most to gain, and then kind of like teaching you, like think like the bad guy, right? Like what would I do if I was trying to deceive you, right? If I wanted you to think that I had your vote, what would I do if I wanted you to believe that you had control, right? What if I want to do if I was going to control you to say or think the way that I think you should think or say things? How would I control it? What would I do? Jay Dyer talks about, I think they're called they hold large groups and they're think tanks, but I thought there's another word for it. But the think tanks get together and you can plan out like 20 years in the future if you've got the right people in the room and you've got the right people with the influence, you've got the money. If you know you've got the money and the whole world is based on dollars, that's it. You can do almost anything you want. You can pay off the people you want, you can anything. Because the last straw you'll do is to XX somebody in their eyes. All right, that's like your, hey, we couldn't fool them, we couldn't cheat them, we couldn't steal from them, we couldn't blackmail them. We're just gonna get rid of them off the map and then we'll put someone else in place. But you could make plans like that with infinite money. Okay, I would just say that. So that's how I think. So what this program does is it breaks this down. This to kind of show you the start of it, but I think there's key moments. I should have probably prepped a little more, but we'll try to clip through.
Focus on the future.
But basically, yeah, here's a
You
setup.
normally see on cable or the broadcast networks.
Let's just go over here. Yes, I don't know if you can slide it for you. It's really good. So let's go this part.
Anyone with a home satellite TV system, like the ones you see in bars or in people's yards, could have picked up Robertson and his spin doctor chatting off air. Dish owners are able to receive two types of TV. One is the regular TV programming you normally see on cable or the broadcast networks.
Is that Helmstead still the next one?
The other type of TV is the satellite feed, in this case the feed of George Bush and Larry King chatting during a commercial break.
Kind of weird being seen around the world. Technology.
It's amazing. I think Saddam Hussein is watching this very much.
So if you can already kind of like
Satellite
get your thinking caps on here, you don't have to watch really that much of the rest of this video if you can just like take it down the furthest pessimistic rabbit hole you can imagine, because this is where they just told you that there's one feed where you could watch the actual news we get, right? Which is, okay, Tom, taking you to say, and they wait a couple seconds. Yeah, hey, Tommy, it's better. Yeah, right. So, um, that, and then there's the other feed, right? He just said where you can actually have picked up all the audio and video of them just sitting between the thing, people coaching them on what to say. how to say it, uh, what should be talked about, and then if you just take this to the just literally like draw it out. I can't show my. I wish I'm gonna have set up to show my whiteboard. I get crazy with a lot of my logic stuff I got, but if you just think about the downward spiral of how you could when you look behind the glass and you see what's going on, you're like, oh my gosh, there's all these things happening. But here, this guy recorded a bunch of it, and he's gonna show some. I might skip. I skip really well. I'll find some good parts.
Satellite feeds are used by the networks to transmit images of news events from around the world. An event covered by the network is transmitted up into space to a satellite. The satellite receives and retransmits the image of the event back down to Earth to the network's headquarters, where the video image is edited and contextualized as television. The home satellite dish owner can watch regular TV, or they can tune in the satellite feed and see the event before it has been packaged by the networks as television. In 1992, I bought a couple of satellite dishes and spent the entire year flipping through the channels looking for feeds. I'd lock onto a satellite and go channel by channel through its transmission, recording the feeds. Then I would move on to the next satellite, and the next one, and the next one. By the end of the year, I'd recorded more than 500 hours of feeds.
Don't put a lot of that garbage on. What is this? Are we on the national? Can we turn that on? I don't want to be on national television being just made up.
We're just turning the camera away from him so we can be made up.
Some of the feed guests knew, and some didn't know, their images were being broadcast, unscrambled and visible, to over 3.5 million dish owners across North America. Those who knew they were being watched attempted to stay out of satellite TV's wide frame. But after spending hours a day inside of a television studio, television had become their home.
Yeah. So when we talk about this stuff, like one thing that comes to mind. So what he's saying is like basically the reason why he has a lot of the shady kind of background stuff is that they just got used to it being on, right? Nobody ever like this guy right here. You saw him. He's like, whoa, I don't want to be on there. And then they turn the camera so you still get the audio, right? But they don't want to lose the feed, so they keep it on. But it kind of makes me wonder because satellite dish technology, like dish TV, was like real big for a really long time, right? And it started picking up the pace when I was younger. Picking up the pace. Everybody had satellite, hundreds of channels, crazy amount of information. But I never heard about that. I mean, obviously, why would I? How would I know? A younger kid, but yeah, I think them replacing satellite dishes now, it might be like maybe this is why you don't see satellite dishes that much. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, yeah.
As Bush's ratings fell further, he decided to appear on Larry King's show. His appearance marked the first time a U.S. president had been on a call-in talk show in over 15 years.
You feeling well, by the way?
Yeah?
Are you feeling well?
You're good. You're lucky. Running still and played tennis yesterday.
What is that disease you had?
Crohn's? No, not Crohn's. Just thyroid. I don't know what it was.
What are they? They drug treat it, right?
Take the drug every single morning. Little blue thing, Synthroid or something. And it wasn't hard. It's what the thyroid does to make your heart fibrillate. It's been very good.
I took Halcyon for a
So
long time after my heart surgery.
Yeah.
You often have to
So all this is him talking about, this is all off air, right? Like this is like their background conversations. But what I will say, one things that I brought up before, is remember we used to do fireside chats. Who was it? The president that did those. Every night, was it every single night? I think he had a talk with him talking to the American public over the radio. I believe. I don't think it's TV is too far back, but can you imagine that world today? And this is another kind of thing that adds to, because the reason I brought it up is they just said it's the first time a president was on TV for 15 years on a talk show, like taking calls or being interrogated, right? And you think about this, nowadays, like Trump was on Jimmy Kimmel, or, oh my gosh, no, was it Jimmy Fallon, right? Yeah, he's on Jimmy Fallon last time, I think. And that's just one time, right? And then he's on, I think was Biden on Jimmy Fallon too, one time. But anyway, the difference here is that that's so crazy, right? We're from like a president being like wide open, telling everybody what his ideals were, um, telling people like just can you imagine being able to know the president that well? Like I'm not even a fanboy of the president, but if we could hear them every single night talk about his thoughts and his feelings and how he felt the day when the world was going, uh, the kind of like stress in his voice, it'd be like talking to like your grandpa or something. And I think I there's something powerful about that. It feels like it would feel good. Like you would be like, wow. And you have tons of patriotism. Anyway, the thing I'm saying about, I guess, what I think about is that fast forward to now, and there's so much secrecy, um, so much fake lying, just just nothing's real anymore. So I think it would be like a crazy risk for them to put the president on a call every night with the nation, just talking about things with people, right? Or just saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna start a fireside chat," but they'd be like, "No, no, no, you can't. Right? You got to stick to this script. It's written by that guy over there and that guy over there." And you have to say these things, and if you don't like what people question, you just walk out of the room. That the things they do today, when they're questioned, and it's insane to me, that alone should be enough proof that when someone brings up a conspiracy or some secrecy thing and some idea about how the government's hiding something from us, that should kind of help you realize that that's got to be true because they don't. You'll find here that when they only start going on the show, and here I'm saying this because I want to speed it up a little bit. I was taking way too long, guys. I'm sorry, but I don't want to. You should watch this on whatever channels have this on right the whole video. Um, I might share the whole video later. I don't know, but really, what they're saying is that a few things come from this. Okay, the ratings are skyrocketing, right? So, what do they want to do? Put the president in front of the camera as much as possible. This is where you see they have the first presidential debate, the first major one on TV. I think it's the first one, in '92. They have um, they edge out. Um, there's a whole candidate that they invited somewhere, and then they it didn't even have what is it here? Where's it at? Where's it at? Yeah, there's this where there was a picture in the background they took away. I'm trying to get to that part. Sorry.
Tour by Barbara Bush.
Channel 4,
Yeah,
do you read
watch.
us in Washington?
Yeah, they said this
WYFF. Come in.
picture they didn't want to show it,
Remember
so they
that
switched it
every
out. Oh,
single
there you go.
man,
Okay, see
woman,
how
and
it's different
child
now.
in the state of South Carolina awakens to a freer, safer world because of George Bush.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, when the president was in Japan and he
You want
choked,
to take one of
and they had
Anna,
that picture
you
of him
got it.
choking, and some people
Do
I
whatever
heard
you need to
conspiracy
do.
that he died or whatever. Then, but that's whatever. I don't believe that one. But there, they just because there's the picture in the background looks so much like it. That's why they stopped it and they changed the picture out. It's insanity because I don't think people realize how much setup this stuff has. They don't just like invite the president over or like anybody. They don't invite you over and like sit you down like, okay, didn't prep you at all. Let's go, right? And they start talking to them. Not people at this level. This isn't how this works. Okay, um, I think.
Every single man, woman, and child in the state of South Carolina awakens to a freer, safer world because of George Bush.
WIS, do you hear us in Washington?
I would remind people that every single morning we all awaken to a safer, freer world because of George Bush.
WCBD, do you hear us in Washington?
And Nicole, I would remind you and the people of Florence that all of us awaken every single day to a freer, safer world because of George Bush.
WCSC, do you read us in Washington?
They themselves awaken every single day to a freer, safer world because of George Bush.
In the Lord's words.
Campaigning via the satellite tour allowed the candidates to cover long distances. But there was another major benefit. They could bypass the national TV networks. There was no need to feed through the TV network center and on to the local stations. The campaign was now the center and its own television network.
This is great. I love these. Can we do any more?
We do some now. We do those 2 now. Got to do some more in Florida and Texas. Have we done all of Colorado today?
So I don't really blame him for abusing the. I mean, just so you know, I mean, take all this stuff as a separate little piece to the bigger puzzle, but I think that just makes sense to me too. I mean, instead of like they're saying, instead of like going to different channels and doing different interviews or whatever, they're just doing like the same sentence. So people would do that today in the digital world. They're just gonna have one advertisement and just send it to all the places it's gonna go to. So that's all they're really doing. I don't know if someone thinks there's more to it than that. You can message me or something and kind of bring it to my attention. But this part isn't as bad. But anyway, we start to get into the part. This just keeps building up, right? To eventually they edge out a candidate completely, even though he ends up being in a certain place. They don't even the news doesn't report him on the paper. They don't show him in the photos they took. They took a photo of the 5 candidates next to each other. And they cut or 3 of them, and they cut him out of the picture that they actually posted. And he was invited to their caucus or whatever they call that. I don't know what it was on here. I might click to it, but they invite him to the thing. They don't even do his makeup for him that they said they were going to do. So he has to get his own guy. He has to pay his own guy to go to the store to get makeup to do the interview. Then they don't even show it. Then he gets so mad that during the 92 debates, he stands up and yells something, gets arrested, and then the voting day is his court date for it. So anyway, just we're talking just collusion against a candidate because they didn't want him to be. And when he asked them why, they said he didn't have enough exposure to earn more exposure. Okay, so again, his ratings based. When they did the presidents, that's why they started to have them come on TV more often. That's why they made the debates. They even have a part right before the debates where Larry King is meeting with each presidential candidate one at a time. Like before, all that background footage you don't get to see. He's trying to coach them and he's trying to manipulate them and build them up so that they will bring him in, that they'll let him be the debate moderator. Right? I think he should have. I don't know why he didn't. I don't know who they chose. They don't really mention it, but they just show that there was that manipulation in the background. Those discussions that happened with the cameras off completely. Anyway, this other candidate, he's out of it. Then they have, but what I want to add to that is that, like, okay, so they don't show him in the paper, they don't show anything about him, right? The problem with that is that they just chose for you who you were able to see, and it should just be. I mean, maybe the guy didn't matter at all, right? He had like 4% of the vote. Doubt he would have made it. Doubt he would have made it. It's just the fact that they chose these news agencies get to choose who's important, who's not, who's in the race and who isn't. Because it's weird, they're saying you didn't have enough exposure to get more exposure. You didn't earn more exposure if you don't have enough already. But then they're the ones that edge the exposure out. So that sounds like somebody really high up was like, just keep giving them BS till they leave you alone. Anyway, so those things are kind of shady, but it gets worse. The government, who's the president at the time? We'll get to that part, but he has them spy on the background channels, right? So remember that background footage of them, like all that satellite footage comes through, and then it's packaged into a message, right? So it's like put together first. They film it all in the background. The president uses their powers to have the signal tracked. That's the worst part about this because, hey, did we see this happen in 2020? Did we see this happen in 2016? We might have been seeing some things that add on to this. So this documentary to me, let me finish that first point. Okay. So they look at the footage ahead of time and they were able to see even his advertisement campaign before it was released. And then so before it was released, they rushed together and did a counter campaign. I mean, whoa, like, can you believe that shit? So they actually were like, we spied on you, found your feed, right? Because we used the power of the governmental agencies. So we paid people tax money to track the opponent, find the opponent's feed. Once we saw what the opponent was doing, we did a counter feed and then posted ours before them. And then that way, by the time his commercial or whatever came out, his campaign commercial, it's a mute point or whatever, or it's perfectly combated because they had days ahead to think it through. Um, Man, that's just shady shit, right? And no, and then everybody, I mean, people got to know this is like the first time it happens, and we know of because of these satellite feeds, right? This is the first time. And then if you follow that rabbit hole even further down, and the obviously um, it just gets worse and worse. And there's a lady at the end they use it for spying. Let's see. Yeah, this TV evangelist thing. There's a part here where he gets into, and uh, I know it happened, but it's like the religious right being controlled by this dude. Every time I've seen this guy in my time that I care about, he's like click to him.
Foreign policy advocates of the foreign policy initiatives that we've seen very successfully over the last 10 to
He's like a
12
big fake,
years,
right? Big fake.
And to put together that coalition. And I think that the last thing we need is recrimination and finger pointing and that sort of thing. It's good. The Republican Party will probably have a splendid opportunity if we have some economic collapse in the next 2 or 3 years to come back strong in '96.
Pat Robertson, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Frank Gumble?
Tom, that's the closest we've seen to the start of what might be a round of finger pointing. How much of it do you think we are going to see?
Well, I think that the Pat Robertson movement, and he's not the only one who's involved in it, is very important and to some Republicans a little terrifying right now because they're very well organized.
He says we're very important and very well organized in county by county. Yes. The new religious right. They'll organize out of sight of the conventional machinery and then go out and win.
This doesn't
It
seem
was
like that
reported
long.
after the election that the Clinton White House uses the Department of Defense to intercept satellite TV feeds on a regular basis. This monitoring practice started during the 1992 election, as Al Gore's wife, Tipper, found out during the campaign.
Everyone's watching on Little Rock.
Okay. They're watching these satellite feeds?
Oh yeah, we can, that we pull it whenever any of you all do a satellite tour, they pull it down on Little Rock on all the monitors and the whole headquarters.
Just the actual interviews, not this part.
The Clinton campaign also intercepted the satellite feeds of the TV network news. Clinton strategists would watch the network's satellite feed of a network news story about Clinton. This would give the strategist the ability to respond to the story before it ever aired on regular network television.
Look at that shady shit.
Frankly, this goal is almost within reach. Clinton's trying to lift his sights beyond the attack politics.
4 years.
Feeling that his goal is almost within reach, Clinton is now trying to lift his sights beyond the attack politics of the campaign.
Clinton also monitored the satellite feeds of his opponents. According to the American Journalism Review, the Clinton campaign intercepted the satellite feed of a Bush commercial 36 hours before the commercial aired on network television.
But here's what Clinton economics could mean to you. $1,088 more in taxes. $2,072 more in taxes.
By intercepting the feed, Clinton strategists had the ability to respond to Bush's ad before the ad had ever aired.
4 years ago, he asked you to believe him.
Read my lips.
Now he's asking you to believe his attacks against Bill Clinton.
I need to get the big banner on the PVC. I need to use it as a tool to flush out the Bush Quail sign, say abortion, right in front of
Crazy.
This is a satellite feed of a Clinton rally. The person you just heard speaking was probably one of Clinton's security team standing near an open microphone on the stage. The instructions he was giving may have come from Clinton's staff in Little Rock, which regularly monitored the feeds of Clinton's rallies.
that Dodger sign in now, whether it's a sign, somebody's going to go up. Bar to there, they're going to get it misplaced too. That abortion thing's going to kill us too. We can't block everything.
Little Rock would watch the satellite feed of the Clinton camera slowly panning the audience like a surveillance camera. If they saw a protester at the public event,
where the advanced person is in a sea of 2,000 people, Little Rock was able to say, I can see you on TV. Now go 2 people over to your left. It was really very fascinating. High tech.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's why when they said there are shadows in your face, that was Little Rock calling, saying shadows on your face.
Oh.
See, everybody watches.
That's how they end it. It's pretty cool. I mean, they're a little creepy, right? Everybody watches. Yeah, here's a guy that did it all. His name, producer and edited by Brian Springer. Yeah, so basically you can kind of see how this it's a slippery slope downward into the intelligence agencies, right, where they can monitor people through these feeds, and why wouldn't you just make? I mean, this is what I'm saying. I'm thinking like them. Why wouldn't I just make that department like 10 times bigger, and then just monitor every feed? Ever there be a person at every feed, and then the more intelligence we get, computerized stuff, there might be like two feeds per person, etc. But yeah, I would get a guy to watch every feed. Anytime they saw anything kind of weird, they would notify somebody, right? There'd be a whole chain of command. I'd make a perfect process to mark the thing down. We'd be able to do 2 things with this, though. This is why it gets kind of conspiratorial. 1, you could stop things from happening. Or 2, like they did, they saw something that allowed them to generate content ahead of time. So if you want to cause something to happen, you know exactly how to do it. You've been watching the scene, you've been watching the area, you know what's going on. Anyway, I think it's kind of crazy. I don't want to get into this too much, but yeah, this is something that happened, and I don't know how many assumptions there are in this. It seems pretty, kind of cut and dry that obviously through these feeds that people are able to be fake, and that's a part that I didn't really pull out that much. But with the Christian evangelist guy, he super fake, right? I mean, there's a part, maybe I should go to it, because he's saying don't show the cameras of the. He's telling them do not show abortion signs. Do not. Yeah, here's a big conversation. Yeah, here it is.
How to win. Andrea Francis, CBN News.
Sorry, that's too loud. Sorry.
On the first day of the Republican National Convention, Operation Rescue broke through this line of clinic defenders and blockaded an abortion clinic near the convention site. That same day, Robertson had this discussion with a CBN staff person.
I have sent word to keep that Operation Rescue. I don't want one word on this program this week about Operation Rescue.
We're not.
I don't want to cover it. I don't want to talk about it. And I want you to work.
That same morning, Republicans who supported women's right to choose an abortion held a rally in Houston led by Ann Stone.
And looking at her, I don't remember.
I mean, we felt like we should cover it as in.
Don't cover anything about the abortion debate any longer. It doesn't matter. They passed the platform. You need to get cameras covering our rally, our God.
Oh, we're there. We're going to be there.
And
does it start?
And then you need cameras
it's crunch
shooting
time for President George Bush.
or me sitting in the vice president's spine. Various things.
We can have students.
Both.
5 minutes before.
But I believe in objective news. I believe in balanced news. I don't want to slant the news. I just want to tell it like it is.
Yeah, so right there, he just literally said, "Oh, I just want to tell it like it is." That's what everybody heard, right? On the normal news. You didn't get the background part where he said, "Don't show the abortion debate stuff. Don't show the riots. Don't show any of the things related to him and his movement, because he doesn't want you to see it that day because it's a little too gritty. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on there. A lot of that. Anyway, so that's one of the things. I'm glad I had the chance to throw it up here with the show people the truth of how things roll out. You can only see how this just, like I said, got worse. So, I mean, this was only 1992 and it's all happened. So just slippery slope, keep going. Kind of interesting to see how it happened initially, I guess. Anyway, if you got any questions or comments on that, that's it for this video. I'll have to call it a night. And then hopefully I don't take too long to do more stuff because I've got some actual, like I said, real videos to come out. There's one that I want to do about words as weapons and how words have been manipulated to control us. We're going to talk about things like shifting vocabularies, how we change the definitions of words over time, and me being old enough to had to do my vocabulary test as a kid, and even as I grew up, and we find out what words mean, and you hold these definitions your whole life, and then suddenly these definitions are changed. Then we get there's some parts where what was the other one? I mean, there's a few. I'm trying to maybe it is too late. Anyway, that's one of them. And then and I have a lot of research on it that I've done about the psychology of words and things like that. Then there's problem of evil that I know a lot of people have talked about, but I've never seen anybody address it the way that I'm going to. I need my whiteboard for it, so I'm going to try to find a way to do that, and then hopefully I can get that to be kind of interactive. I wish I had some people to kind of check and balance me as we talk through it, because that would make it a little more fun to do. So yeah, the problem of evil, you got word as weapons, word manipulation. Oh gosh, what's that? Just other little topics as well, like life coaches. Got a thing about that. But I also want to, and then I want to start doing videos again that actually talk about resumes and job searching and things like that. And again, that would be great to have somebody. So if you end up seeing this and you're into job coaching stuff, or you want me to help you find a job, even if you're just like, hey, humor me, or help you with a better resume, etc., or resume advice, I can do that as well. So anyway, beyond that, I'll end it for today. Thanks for watching.